Okay, we're going back. We're going live. Morning, councillors, officers, viewers. Thank you for attending this morning. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, and it will be conducted in accordance with the constitution of Newbury City Council. A recording will be made available as soon as possible, and a Welsh translation can be given if you want it. Moving on to the agenda, then, please. A slight change to the agenda. After officer presentation, Edin and Pobble, I'm very grateful for their attendance this morning, will give their presentation, and that will be followed by councillors' questions. When we've started the report, if councillor would like to say anything, to be welcomed. Thank you. Right, any declarations of interest, please, from the members? No, thank you. Any apologies? No, thank you. Minister, previous meetings and please, pages 3 to 6. Councillor Evans, you want?
It matters arising, Chair, thank you. On page 3, back in our meeting in July, the committee asked Councillor Harris for an update regarding their query about Lice being a Welsh name but not bilingual. Councillor Harris was going to resolve the board, so he requests an update. Yes, I contacted the local authority at the page section with the national reply, so I've emailed them and I'm going to reply from them. So hopefully that'll be next week. Thank you.
Right. With that point clear, can we agree the minutes as a regional record?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone in favour? Thank you.
There was one other question. Rising Chair.
Yes, please.
On 5C, page 4, outcomes monitoring. This goes back to the community parent strategy. We question why it wasn't updated ahead of the report being discussed in Cabinet. Basically, another update in the meeting on the 24th of July, we asked for percentages to be included before it went to Cabinet, but it went to Cabinet without the changes. And we were told that the strategic director would investigate the response to the committee. Do we know if we've had that response?
I wasn't at it yet. I will email recency to see where we are.
Thank you.
I believe you're going to cover that in the officer's report as well.
I can do if you want to, Chair, but they don't need to say it. We haven't got anything to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the MD Home Strategy 2025. Councillor Tan, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to introduce our council's updated empty home strategy 2035-2030. It will replace the 2019 strategy, which sets out how we intend to bring long-term vacant property back into use to support our local housing priorities, also to ensure that there's not a blight in any community. Empty homes are a wasted resource at a time when the housing demand across Wales, specifically here in Newport, we know continues to grow. The strategy is intended to ensure that we make best use of available funding and data. It also contributes to our wider goals on community regen, reducing antisocial behaviour at local level. I look forward to hearing those views and working together to ensure this strategy delivers real results for our residents.
And be
Thanks, Chair. So Sarah's going to take us through a really kind of short presentation in a moment, just to kind of summarize the strategy and what we're hoping to achieve through it. What I would say, and we'll hear from our RSL partners at that point as well, what we have tried to do with the strategy is to really kind of think about how we can capture empty lot homes more widely than we have previously. This is part of the reason we've got our RSL our partners in the group. The strategy is kind of based on existing work, and it's also a strategic document that will enable us to, will support us in delivering other key operational activities and how to move forward. What I would say in terms of particularly the RSL colleagues is that they're updating on their current approaches and probably just, this is the strategic space rather than key operational issues. And the last thing that I wanted to say before I hand over to Sarah is that we do recognise that kind of probably come out in the strategy that FTA is a really innovative issue and also a really complex issue, particularly in the private sector. Often it's more related to a personal circumstance rather than the property itself. I think within this meeting, we won't necessarily get into the detail behind that. So talking to Councillor Dan, what we'd like to do is offer a session to all members to talk about our work in tackling empty homes in more detail. So I'll be talking to colleagues within democratic services and looking at 6 more days over the next kind of 6 months to really kind of give them some opportunity to get into more of the specific detail. So I'll hand over to Sarah now. She'll introduce herself with the presentation.
Yeah, good morning everyone. I'm Sarah Spicer, the Housing Strategy and Legal Manager, and my team have been working on developing a new empty home strategy, and that's what's been presented to you today. So the strategy sets out our key objectives and it provides a framework that we operate in to try and facilitate the empty homes. The most significant change from the previous strategy is that focused on properties that were covered by the Welsh Government Public Accountability Measure. So the focus was on private empty properties, and even then, quite a lot of those properties were exempt from the measure. So there were exceptions and exemption categories. So the new strategy that we're looking at widens that beyond homes, and also we are working actively on some of the properties that are actually exempt. So just for clarity, an empty home is unoccupied, it's devoid of furniture, and the Welsh Government's definition is that the property needs to be empty for more than 6 months as of the 1st of April, and that gives us a list of Welsh on every year. For other purposes, such as council tax premiums, those are applied to empty properties once they've been empty for 12 months. And the strategy does try to recognise the complexities that David mentioned around actually targeting. So the strategy contents focus on both the impact and the benefits of tackling empty homes, both for the owners themselves, but also for neighbours and communities, provide some information around local context, then sets out our approach to tackling empty homes and our strategic aims and how we monitor the impact of the strategy. And in terms of the approach, the team focus on identifying those empty homes and record keeping, on working with owners, providing information and guidance on how they can bring them back into use, and signposting to them to things that will help them to be able to do so. We try and work on raising awareness of the issues caused by empty homes and on tackling complaints that come from those people who are affected. The local authorities taking the decision to apply both council tax and second-hand premiums with an aim of reducing the number of empty homes. The strategy also looks at how we will prioritise work and some of the things that we do, such as financial assistance to help owners bring property back into use themselves. And when the softer things fail, we also look at enforcement action to try and force issues where no problems are arising. And it also looks at our partnership approach that we take with our partners. So there are success stories that we are building on. So there are very successful interventions that have taken place in previous years, and there have been numerous different types of interventions that help with that. So, for example, when there are certain types of debt which are owed to the council on an empty home, if there are issues with debt as part of the debt recovery process, we can look to enforce the sale. That's happened on a number of occasions, and the result is purchased, renovated and occupied. We've secured orders of sales that resulted in an empty property being brought back the registered social landlord because it was a block that it was owned by them. We run a safe, warm and secure loans scheme, and although that is not exclusively used with empty homes, that will help and enable homeowners to be able to bring their properties up to standard should they wish to move in or to let them. We've got the implementation of the leasing scheme of Wales. We also provide VAT exemption letters that can help make renovations more cost effective for owners to help them bring back into use. And we've worked with our RSL partners to get funding for 124 registered social landlord long-term void entities to get them back into use. So in terms of the benefits of having a new strategy, one of the most significant things is that it needs to reflect current legislation and it needs to reflect the range of activities being undertaken, because the team have already started to shift their focus to homes that sit outside of those measures. So it's important our strategies actually reflect the work that we are doing. It helps to highlight the scale of the issue. So as of April this year, there were over 2,400 empty residential properties, of which 1,097 were empty for 6 months or longer and fell under the accountability measures set up by the Welsh Government. So it is important to remember that there will be some empty properties that are just transitional. So a home sat empty one is waiting to sell. That is quite a normal part of the housing market, where our focus is those long-term ones that are moving, as the cabinet said, can become a blight for neighbours. So within this strategy, it sets out the details of the legislative framework that we operate in that can both enable us and restrict us with regards to the actions that we can take to bring back into use. But it's also a first step, not a final step, in developing a new strategy. So we want this to create an umbrella for new policies and processes. So, for example, we've already started work on a sales policy that would sit below the strategy. So it's by no means the kind of a final step. It's just a starting point to help us to create a better framework for delivering better outcomes. And it provides direction and focus. It will help us with decision making in the long term. So in terms of the strategy, the approach we actually used to develop the strategy, the legislation provides a really strong framework that we will operate in. We also undertook desktop analysis and networking with other local authorities to make sure that it reflected good practice, and we invited comments from our internal stakeholders. So although we have a small dedicated resource for attacking empty homes, they are very reliant on a collaborative approach with member institutes across the council. So there are also really important contributions from environmental health, building control, planning, legal, as well as our head of service, who contribute to us being able to create good outcomes. In terms of good practice, when we've gone out and we've looked at where the number of empty homes, the data about the number of empty homes, Newport sits mid-table, both in terms of the number, but also the percentage of stock. And it's important to remember those can look quite different for larger and smaller local authorities. But whichever way we did it, we were quite middle of the table on both of those things. The work that we did recognised that there is a lot of good practice already in place, and the officers worked very hard to deliver interventions. But there's always more that we can learn. So we are constantly trying new things to try and improve the outcomes that we are actually delivering. So the empty homes work needs to be supported through development of policy and processes, and also from continually learning and trialing new approaches. So, for example, at the moment we are trying to get some of the work automated using technology in order to free up officers time and have more time to be actually entering into dialogue, going out and visits and being out and about. So the strategy needs to go to Cabinet and then to full council for approval, and apologies. The updated Cabinet date is the 12th of November, and then full council on the 25th of November. Assuming everything is approved, we'll then arrange for it to be translated and published and continue to implement the changes. Now, as I said, the strategy now focuses not just on private entity property, but also our registered and landlord partners who very kindly agreed to come along and talk a little bit about their work in tackling the empty homes. So we have a slide, first of all, from our colleague in Heading, who has joined us online. So if I can pass over to Justin.
Do this, Spicer. Obviously, members have only seen your report today. Could you make it available to our committee clerk to attach the minutes, please?
Absolutely.
And if members want more details, can they email you independently? Because I say that no time. Further.
The RSL site, isn't it?
No, not the RSL side, your side, the presentation we just had.
Yes, absolutely. And it's with Scrutiny colleagues, so that can be forwarded to you. And yes, please do reach out to me if you've got any questions today.
With the RSL side, obviously it's their presentation. They can't be scrutinised in the way our officers can be scrutinised. So, please.
We start just in. I think is online, ready to go.
Hello, Justin, can you hear us? Wasn't it here?
I'm happy to go along. Please. Yeah, he was good there. Okay, you may drop it. If you want to ask.
Do you want us to go forward on the bubble slide?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I'm happy to.
Final adjustments.
There another slide.
Yeah, really, I'm just asking my colleague to change it.
Okay. So I'm Claire on the area as the chair for Pobble and communities. I've worked with Pobble Charter on the care. Sarah is, I'm sure you're all familiar with for over 20 years.
Yeah. Hey, you need to shop soon, your screen, yeah.
Yeah. He's on mute though.
Carry on, Andrew.
We're currently in a trial process of a pilot for Newport to tackle the empty homes that we have. You can get the stats for you. You're on there. I'll just go through the headlines of them and maybe a little bit of context about why we're in this position. So we've got 169 boys currently in Newport. 46 of those sit within two developments that we've had quite substantial difficulties within the building. Untitled, which is an old person scheme in Marcus that unfortunately had some pregnant issues that we've been unable to resolve. So we're currently all residents are decanted whilst we establish a group for council about what we can do to bring that property back up to the west side. So there are residents, unfortunately, that have been decanted. Some have taken on longer term tenancies, and our partners have been great in offering that security for some residents. For those that have decided to leave, whereas a lot of them still hold a tenancy with us. We've also got Castello and Constantia Crawley, which is off East Dock Road. And unfortunately, there was significant issues with the building roof. These buildings are 7 years old, and we've had to take the whole roof down and move every resident out and refit the property at significant cost. Unfortunately, that's due to an issue with the builders who are no longer operating, so we don't have any recourse to go back to that. So they're not excuses really, but really some context. There are 46 of our empty homes currently undergoing significant refurbishment, and that's why we're holding those. The others then are a bit more of a, there is a, I think David's got a slide down here.
Yeah, just asking my
Okay.
It's really well. Yeah. We're more interested in the future policies. How you're going to work with council rather than looking. projects you've got at the moment.
Yeah, no problem at all. So what we are doing, so we have currently 32 properties undergoing refurbishment with TACP, which is the funding that Sarah and a team have provided for us to bring long-term homes back into use to get them to the standard that is now required under our standard 2. We've always aimed to meet that and to better it. We were in the opposite floor, for example, in Andy homes for relets for residents, but the TACP partnership has been significant and helped us reduce those number of long-term rentals that we do have. It's continuing this fiscal year. 32 that are currently undergoing the works, or actually the way to start. That's quite a complex project to manage the scale of renovation. For example, on Corporation Road, we have six properties that were sort of intertwined flats and masonettes. Those properties are now empty. We have secured TCP funding. We're looking at the redesign of that to make sure there's garden space for residents. It can be quite a complex project, but we're not able to deliver all of those in one go with the contract that we have in place. We, as part of our project in report, we're looking at quick wins for property, but what we don't want to do is drop the standard that we have for our residents. We want to make sure that we have a high standard of home for new residents, and our properties are getting to the age now where they're needing significant age-based rewires, which is around 30 years. New kitchens and bathrooms in a lot of properties, and through our stock, the figures there, so you can see that 12 current ones are having major works. There's also a further number of projects. So my point really is that the complexity of the properties that we have and we want to return to a high standard, it is quite a challenge, and that is why some homes take longer. But in terms of the future, the TACP funding and we've also had some housing with care fund funding as well for 10 properties. We're actually seeing these funding methods be able to, we can obtain these quickly now rather than waiting years to be able to decide what to do with the property, and we're able to act quickly and refurbish these properties to sooner. Before the TACP announcement, we were doing a lot of what's called option appraisals, which is where we decide how we're able to justify the investment that would be required to bring a property up to the standard that we would be ready to want to help to, but without significant funding. External streams like TCP and HCM that was quite hard to establish, but we were always reluctant to sell. So sometimes they stayed empty while we were trying to establish exactly what we can do with those homes to be able to bring them up to the standard. However, with the partnership with the council and with the health board with HCM, we quickly identified them. So this lag that we've got that sees us have quite a lot of long-term empty homes. We're identifying homes now proactively. We have one empty flat, a block of flats. We've already identified that actually when the next problem becomes available, we'd like that to go to TACP to move forward energy efficiency and enhancements that otherwise we'd be able to put in at this stage. So we've been far more partnership with them. Just worth noting that those figures, I know Sarah mentioned that empty home lease is something considered to be more than 12 months, 6 months, sorry. That's all of our properties. Some of them at the time of getting that data have been empty from day. So this is everything, not just anything that meets our criteria. Around 30% of this total figure have been empty for 12 months, so the majority far less than, and again, around 60% less than 6. So it's not significant amounts. It is too many. We agree with that. We do have a plan, as I've explained, to reduce that. To understand.
Thank you very much. So can we move on now to Helen, please?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, my sincere apologies for that technical glitch earlier on, but thankfully I'm here now. I'm Justin Wigmore. I'm the Director of Homes and Communities at Heading. So I'm just going to give you a a brief sort of overview of where we are at the moment at this point in time with empty homes. I think firstly, just to flag up, we get roughly around 700 homes every year that come available for reletting within Newport. Big number, but it's a good thing. It creates that churn, gives people the opportunity in many cases to get their first secure home, but it also provides opportunities for people to upsize, downsize, and find the accommodation that is most suitable to their needs at a point in time. Andrew just alluded to some of this actually on the next line, is that large numbers of the properties we're getting coming back to us need significant investment to bring them up to the standard that Welsh Government expects. Welsh Quality Housing Standard 2 has some quite stringent guidelines of things that we need to adhere to, and we are finding that the costs of bringing properties back up to that standard are increasing. We're also seeing an increased number of properties coming back to us in a poor condition, which again increases the costs that are basically payable to get them up to that standard. What we do internally with regards to empty properties, we put them into two categories, and they're either strategic or routine. Just on strategic, I'll put some examples in there. It's not a definitive list, but some examples of why we would put them into that category. And they would be for repurposing. So that may be where we look at a property and think an alternative need would be better. For an example of this is we're currently in discussions with the local authority on a property in Spencer Road, whether that could potentially be used for supported accommodation. So that's an option that we're looking at the moment. I've got down there decants as well. For those who don't know, just for clarity, that is where we've identified a property where the existing resident needs to move out to do substantial repairs. And so obviously we'd put that into the strategic category, and we'd also put properties that are included in wider regeneration areas. Some numbers that we currently have as of this week, we've got 83 properties we're classing as strategic and 119 routine. Of the 83 strategic, a lot of those, probably about 30, just over 30, are in the Somerton area, and we've been working with the council using TACP funding that Andrew mentioned earlier to address those and get those back up to the lettable standard and get them let to people on the waiting list. We hope to have that 30 ready. The plan is by December, so they should be all let by the turn of the year. Just to give you an idea in terms of a percentage of our total stock that are currently empty, it's a little over 2%, which is too high for us. I guess the message I would want to give is getting all empty homes let is a priority for us. It's our main form of income, and it doesn't serve us well to have empty homes sat there. I mentioned working in partnership with the local authority. I think some of the relationships we've built up or developed further over the last 6 or 7 months since heading was created in April have certainly, I think, in terms of dialogue, improved. We meet regularly on a strategic basis on a quarterly basis, but there are many other meetings and contacts going in the intervening period. The last line I just wanted to put down there was around working smarter, because I know Andrew said this as well, but we're very conscious that we can get better and we need to get better in this area. There's work going on at the moment. We're looking internally at reshaping teams and service areas. I can assure you and give you that assurance that empty homes and getting better in this area is an absolute priority for heading. So that a brief overview of where we are with empty homes.
Okay, thank you very much. Unusually this morning we're going to do our questioning a little differently. Councillor Cox and Councillor Linton got to go early because we've started later than normal this morning. So over to you, Councillor Cox, first, please.
I think actually some of what I was interested in has come out through the presentations. I mean, what before all this, before the presentation started, I was just interested in how effective the some of the sort of more punitive measures that have recently been adopted are actually being. I mean, I note in the report that we're waiting for the Welsh government actually to lay down some kinds of monitoring criteria, and that's still to happen. But obviously the report mentions a series of punitive sort of, if you like, actions that can be taken, and also the council recently levied an extra layer of council tax on top of empty homes, and I just wonder if we could have some sense of what effect that's having.
So with us we have Emma Johnson, who is can you share your job title?
I'm the revenue and benefit manager, so I cover council tax.
Sorry, can you hear that officer that just spoke?
Thanks, of course. We've got Emma Johnson with us, who's just joining the table. We invited her along because we thought there would likely be some questions around council tax premium. So Emma, sorry, if you could introduce yourself again and share information regarding their impacts.
I'm Emma Johnson. I'm the revenue and benefit manager, so council tax sits in my remit. As you rightly said, Councillor, we introduced as a council tax premiums from April 2024, initially just for long-term empty properties, and then from April 2025 that was expanded to cover second homes, holiday homes, second homes, lets, etc., because the legislation was ever so slightly different. Council tax, the long-term empty property, is classed as something that's been continually unoccupied and unfurnished for a minimum of 12 months. And as at April 2025, we were charging 578 premiums, properties with a premium, which would be anything that was due a premium that wasn't excluded from the premiums, because there are some exclusions if a property is up for sale, etc. If it's up for sale, God, what the other ones are. There are some exclusions, being advertised to let, and so on and so forth. As at April 2025, they have decreased slightly. We're now charging 578 properties, the long-term empty premium. So on the face of it, there's been a reduction there of roughly 20 properties that are being charged a long-term empty premium. But we have to remember that they're not necessarily the exact same properties, because these properties, we've already heard from Sarah about the churn in the housing market. Properties become empty, they get occupied, etc. So yes, they've reduced, we have the same number, but there may be different properties in that mix. Does that make sense? Yeah, so we've been charging the properties for a full 12 months now to the long-term empty premium.
Councillor Cox, are you content?
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Me?
You?
No, I know that was the main issue I was interested in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Linton.
Right, thank you, Chair. Questions, Justin. I'm interested in your void turnaround. I know you say it's important to head in to quickly turn around these properties, but I'm forever having in my ward, and I'm sure other members are the same, people that are going up and coming up to me and say this flat has been empty for months now and what have you. I'm just interested, what KPIs do you set for the turnaround? For a typical void, for instance, a prefab, the old prefabs, what sort of, is it a 2-week turnaround dependent on what damage is done or anything? What would you expect the average turnaround be?
Okay, for a routine void, we'd be looking at 28 days would be the target that we'd want to turn it around in. I'm going to, no, are we hitting that target with every void? The answer is no, that we're not, and we're aware of that. But that is the target that we have internally to turn around routine voids.
Right, now, would you say you're not hitting the target because of the new WHQS standards that have been set? Like they're introducing more smoke detectors and carpets and everything else, which is more work to be added. So then, are you then going to increase that 28 days to take account of these?
We don't have any plans to increase it. We think that target is achievable, and we demonstrate that by the ones that we can turn around within 28 days. I think that some of the issues that we get, I mentioned property condition. Some of the properties that we get coming back to us are in a condition where the works that we need to do, we really struggle to do it within 28 days. And I think that's evident. I can see that in the internal performance figures that we've got at the moment. But I wouldn't at any point advocate that we want to extend that. I think it's an ambitious target, but I think it's one that we can achieve.
Okay, I go to a lot of empty property and properties that are still got terms of tenants in. I see a lot of the works that the customers done themselves. Your housing officers, do they visit? I know they should go around visiting and tell the customers you've got to tidy your garden, you've got to get rid of the rubbish to limit the amount of work that they've got to do. Sort of just like an inspector as it was, go around every so often and saying to the customer, you've got to tidy this up, I want to see this garden brought back, or something like that, and get rid of all that rubbish.
Councillor Linton, can you talk about policy rather than headings specifically? For viewers' information, Councillor Linton represents Ringland. We're not looking at the social aspects of tenancy, we're looking at the strategy for the future.
Well, I was just adding that in is to speed the process up.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to take that question, Councillor Linton.
Councillor Linton.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay. Have you any other questions, Councillor Linton, on future policy?
No, not at the minute. I'll just see where it goes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions then, please?
Yes. Have we progress monitored on the report?
So, excuse me, we've got 2 KPIs that are monitored as part of the keep. One of which is successful interventions linked to the Welsh Government measure. We also measure the number of units that are brought back into use because of funding, and we are also starting to look at intervention that may fall outside of both of those things, so that we monitor the success of intervention. In terms of monitoring the number of homes, it's a process every year by which we work with council tax to establish the number of empty property at the 1st of April, but we've also introduced new work to monitor the number of RSL, registered social landlord empty homes, and they provide us with their stock information every year. So we do an annual review of the number of empty homes we have, and then we also review the number of interventions that we have, and they fall into different categories. So that allows us to see what type of intervention has been successful, and whether or not from there we will look back on whether or not there have been changes and whether or not done during that year it's been successful.
As we said to that, in terms of the report of the KPIs, so they form part of the communities. service plan and then the end of the year report. We currently know at the moment, obviously, once the strategy is hopefully approved, then we'll look at that again. But empty homes was the form key part of that report. So you'll be able to see, kind of look at our end of year report, and you'll be able to see how we're doing.
When does the end of the year report?
The end of year report is generally produced in the first 2 quarters of the end of the financial year.
Also, in July to the case committee.
Yeah.
So we'll have a mid-year now in November, December, but this won't feature in there until the next step.
Case corporate.
Yes,
Yes.
committee.
And obviously it's
Yeah.
Councillor Adams, you're content? Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm welcome the fact we've got the RSLs here, and you also recognise it's a terrible problem with the city. I was a little bit disappointed when I saw the strategy because I was hoping to have more up-to-date information about these that we've been playing, but other examples of good practice, not just in Wales, but across the UK. I'd like to see more information. I think our target is way too low. I think we're targeting about 1.5%. I just did a quick search, Google, totally random. For instance, there is a Westmoreland and Furness Council, about similar number of properties. I've no idea where that is, but apparently their target's 10% reduction, really, also 1.5%. So I'd like to know why we don't have the same ambition as this council. RCT, again, they were looking at 646 interventions, and it was reduced by 258 in 2023-24. I don't have the up-to-date, but I'd like to receive more information about how we can use best practice across the UK. We've got hundreds of people who have got accommodation and paying for people being paid breakfast accommodation. I'd like to see, a real drive to get these properties. I don't, it's been empty for 10 years. We should be taking tough action, getting those properties, and just ensuring that people have a home to go there. I think it's criminal at the moment that people have got inappropriate accommodation. It's costing money as well. So I'd just like to see a big focus and drive to try to move forward.
Before you answer, Mr. Walton, Councillor Evans did give pre-notice of this question. He emailed us. So can you take that on and come back to us at some stage where you think best practice exists within the country? Because your wide experience of housing, I think, should allow you to.
Well, certainly can check. Yeah, that's fine. I think that in terms of the strategy, that's the framework to really try and drive this problem, because completely agree with the councillor. We've got large numbers of people in temporary accommodation. There's a human and there's the financial cost of that. So this is a really kind of key area that we really want to focus on. And the strategy is that's probably that. In terms of kind of original concept, I think what we will be doing in the strategy is really in our KPIs to ensure that they're ambitious enough, but they also kind of capture work. The previous definition is quite narrow. Probably won't percentages say no, but it's a plan that take on board and address as we implement the strategy.
And how are we going to go to monitor it?
In terms of
Tuesday cabinet.
So as I said, the KPIs form part of the service plan, so our performance will gradually come back in the scrutiny process.
Do you know this is of interest? You've got 1.5%. Do you know what other local authorities strong so Wales?
I don't off the top of my head, but necessarily you've got the.
I know some of the intervention rates, but I don't necessarily know of the targets, but we can get that information.
I think it would be helpful for all of us to get that. I know some we've been table.
In terms of the number of empty homes.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a general question. There was a reference to initials. TACP and another one each.
HCF. So HCF is the Housing and Care Fund. So that is administered by the health boards as to help provide accommodation for any care associated is quite a useful part of funding to be able to refurb homes. So that comes from the local from the house board, so 9-bedroom house board in the wet area, the TACP.
It's maybe
It's Welsh Government Capital Programme, and it's specific target group is move on from temporary accommodation essentially, but it can be used for a range of purposes. It can be used to bring voids back into use. It can be used for internal refurbishment, reconfiguration, or things like the shelf purchase. So an annual grant programme.
So is it easy to get all of this? How long does it take?
Well, it's a fluid process now, isn't it? It's a good partnership. I'm sure that Justin would agree with that. Identifying the properties and the scope of work that was required initially was probably quite a challenge to try and do them. And then it's how much will Welsh Government release annually down to each local authority. But we've got a plan for next year.
We do. So it's an annual programme. And normally at the start of the financial year, we get updated on how much money there is available. There is then a process for submitting applications, which is scrutinised by Welsh Government. When they've agreed the programme, they will then move on and invite applications. But it's not weeks. It can take months. A month for that process to follow through in terms of creating a programme, getting it by Welsh Government, and then getting to the stage where the applications are made and it's released. So, yes.
So that can be a blockage. Is there any way we can facilitate, make it easier? I don't know.
That's a good question. I would say that the time, the funding may be a challenge, but as I've explained, we have a lot of properties held in option appraisal, which is struggling to finance the refurbishment over £100,000, and this is, although there's a slight delay to that, it's speeding up that process a lot quicker than finding external capital to do that. So it's very much welcome that. Just I'm sorry I skipped over the THCP. I should have explained what that was, but that's 100% homeless nominations we've received for every THCP property. That's also indefinite, so that funding secures that property to be relet to 100% nomination on this business with set criteria indefinitely for the rest of its operation. So,
just to come back to your question, in terms of with any grant programme, there's governance processes to go through. I think, in fairness to calling for the Welsh Government, we have seen the TACP programme evolve. So, in terms of standards, in terms of the flexibility there. And it's a programme where there is consistent dialogue and real drive to continually through the year. So if there's specific projects that have a dialogue and look at it. So I think it is one of those programmes that certainly since I've been involved for the last 3 years, we've seen additional flexibility be added into the programme. That programme involvement.
If I might. So does Newport get a reasonable percentage of the available monies, and is an increasing amount? I know you can't predict what might happen next year.
So this year, Welsh Government based the allocation dependent on the number of households each local health authority has in temporary accommodation. So yes, we will receive a very fair allocation, and we will wait to see whether Welsh Government will take the same approach next year and use that as a deciding factor when distributing the allocation budget.
So as Newport is a growing city, is it based on the total number of households, irrespective of what type of accommodation they have, private or?
So the transitional accommodation council is based on the number of households in temporary accommodation, and there are other council programmes that take a different approach. But for that particular one, it is based on numbers in temporary accommodation rather than population numbers.
And so how confident are we with our numbers in temporary accommodation?
In what sense?
Well, are our figures accurate?
Yes.
Are we recording everybody?
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Druitt, yeah.
So I'm really pleased that we have representatives from Pobble heading here. Thanks, Justin and Andrew. And it's really good to see the partnership working between registered social landlords and Newport City Council. And I just wonder that we've heard that the number of voids is too high. Yes, it is. What are the formal mechanisms, and as this of the council, what are the formal mechanisms that are in place that we can hold accountable registered social landlords for the performance indicators and targets in this matter?
Just restart doing this. I think it's worth noting there's always that regulatory aspect of things and but other regulators ultimately, so it's more of a partnership and cooperative approach Councillor Druitt in terms of working with RSL partners in comparison to private owners and landlords. David, if you want to come in on that, we should just elaborate.
Yeah, I've got a comment. So yes, in terms of the regulatory regime, RSL's report into our government. I think, suppose in terms of our partnership with the city, we work collectively with RSLs on the home options approach. So the website, the allocations policy, there's regular meetings to ensure that our approach is maximising opportunities to meet housing needs in the city. Similarly, actually, in terms of when we're thinking broadly around housing delivery, we define the local housing need from a local housing market assessment prospectus and work with our RSL colleagues to deliver against that. So really our role is to be working alongside our partners and to be taking a strategic enabling approach with the best allocations to development. Probably is worth noting that within the allocations for the homelessness bill, the proposals there will be some requirements potentially on how we work with RSLs in terms of the nominations of people to whom we go a homelessness duty, but that's kind of working through the several processes at the moment, so we don't know what that looks like in reality. What I would say, and I think it is it's something that's really built over the last however long, is that the partnerships do feel strong with our RSLs, as Justin mentioned. We with heading on a quarterly basis at a strategic level. We do the same with Pobble, and we've also developed relationships with some new entrants into the city as well. We've been registered with two, for example, the Housing Association.
Thanks, Chair. I hope that we renew the invitation to RSLs to come to this board.
Thank you, Councillor Druitt. Councillor Davis, did you have anything?
Thank you, Chair. No, the questions I had have mainly been answered already, so nothing further from me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. If I might, we've talked about Heading and Popple. Newport houses, how many houses in Newport have sort of vacancy rates, sort of refurbishing rates, etc.?
We don't have any social housing.
But in that emergency,
so we don't own any temporary accommodation list. So that's why we are at the moment. We potentially look at, Captain Dan has mentioned as an ambition to look at the acquisition of.
As the heading's probably aware of that proposal in your ward, that then shared accommodation, which we briefly on.
Yeah.
And there is a directory in going through that in terms of becoming a stockholder. Perhaps that would be beneficial in the future, but there are intricacies around being a stockholder, in terms of the housing revenue and opening that up, different angles in approaching that. And it's not, a simple sort of turnaround in becoming, I think, full of sort of right saying that.
It's not. I suppose one thing we have done, it's probably worth highlighting at a scale, is we've been able to take on a couple of houses that were previously school caretakers' houses and to essentially sustain those assets and to support those caretakers.
I was going to say through chair, don't we still there's a sort of down to starting with park and the cemeteries and things like that. So they're empty buildings, which I think is going to be a question for the finance. Why have we got empty buildings like that? We've got to sell them.
In another forum, we have been advised that the cost of putting them to rights is extortionate.
So that's good.
So I think we certainly have been doing work to look at to look at council assets and are they suitable for conversion, whether that's buildings or whether that's land. I won't comment on the demand lodges, it's a separate service, but they need it up for whatever practice we do.
Did you want to?
I'll just say we've used the TACP for acquisitions, which is we've had some shared ownership properties that the owners have decided to sell, people share and then TACP to bid. So it can be used very creatively for those types of properties that you described that would be suitable for long-term. So we've done discussion.
Right, if there are no other questions,
yeah, just to keep you. The majority, just doing basic maths, the majority of the properties which are empty in the private sector, so not directly to council or RSLs. How effective are we in using something like the 1925 property to actually take strong enforcement action? Is it something we could do?
We use a range of legislation that's been taken into consideration. This is where our partnership working with environmental planning and building. So far in 2025, we made, I think it's 31 referrals for enforcement action. We had 14 notices there. So I'm not saying that there should be more that we could do, but it's something that we are already focused on, and that part of the working. So sometimes the enforcement action doesn't result in that and come back to us. So for example, if a home is in disrepair or isn't safe, we may take enforcement action. The owner may choose to tidy up the gardens or windows, make the property safe. It won't always result in a property coming back into use. But what we do need to make sure is that we are tackling these issues like that. So yes, we do use our legislation in order to bring about change.
Just on that, in terms of and it just speaking about it's departmental issue around health and etc. We've got for instance empty dwelling management orders with exercise, but it's always that with a support first approach, a collaborative and approach in working with property owners, RSLs, etc. Rather than using the stick approach for the carrot. That makes sense.
I sometimes these seems to take years. I think we need to stick at it.
In terms of interventions, I think 23 successful interventions. So we're actually exceeding, I believe, the target that we've set. Sarah, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, we did. So in 2024, we didn't get the target. But since then, we've restructured the team, we've got new dedicated resources, we've tried new ways of working, we've improved our collaboration across the organisation. So last year, we had 23 successful interventions, which is something like 1.9%. And I think I completely understand the point. It's about ambition. Certainly, we are working towards improving that to over 30 years rating and look at reviewing the actual targets. So we are making step changes. This is a step along with some other work that we've got behind the scenes, such as increasing our, changing, creating some policies that sit underneath it, and also looking at new ways of working. So, for example, we've just started sending out bits out to our residential landlord properties of any empty homes that are on the open market that are for sale, and then asking them to talk to us about anything that they might be interested in put forward a grant funding application. So we are kind of trying to carry on with continual improvement and talking to other learning. Most strategies look quite the same. It is about what goes on.
It's just to reinforce that point. This strategy really is the umbrella, so it will be the policies kind of thing. But beyond that, that will touch on some of the ranges that will touch on some of the more forward measures as well.
Okay. Right, thank you very much for your attendance this morning. I think
Councillor Jenkins has a question, Jim.
Oh, great. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I represent the Pilgwenny community area, and I don't know if there's anyone in the room representing Link Housing today. There's been a number of properties in Constable's Close which have been empty for approximately 10 years. I was just hoping that you can reassure me that this replacement empty houses strategy is going to ensure that from happening in the future.
Well, clearly, I was actually declaring interest at this point, obviously living in that area, and the Water Council, of course, hands.
Obviously, Mr. Walton can't answer for the Link, but he's going to answer the question best he can.
I think what probably, given it's a specific issue, I'm aware of the where is the site, Councillor Jenkins. I'll have a chat with Andrew after the meeting. Link are now part of a merger with Popple probably a year or so ago. So we'll get you an update sent outside this meeting, if that's okay.
I know the properties are they're almost finished now, which is great news. But for them to be empty for 10 years is just, I'd like to be reassured that that won't happen again. Thank you very much.
We'll come back to that, Councillor Jenkins.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Right, thank you very much for your attendance this morning. I think we need to have another look at this before the turn of the council, so perhaps a year or so we'll ask for an update. But thank you. We're going to move on to the scrutiny officer's report now, so you're all pretty good. And again, you this bit. If you want. Councillor, do you read this good? You're still lying. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
So obviously I've got our thanks for the Ymddiheuriadau partners engaging with the committee and for attending. I'll make sure that's noted in our official feedback. I've got the recommendation for a more ambitious target reduction of empty homes, which will look at drivers. The request for information on comparable areas targets for reduction of empty homes, just so we can see what how we're doing against other parties can't do it. Your request, Chair, for an information update on the strategy for performance next year. Obviously, David said specifics are reported into place corporate and service plan, but they're not going to accumulation of information like the council. And then I just noted that meeting with competitors with the strategy as is. Is there anything anyone wants to add or anything I can amend?
Well, I think the biggest theme that's comes from this morning is speed of progress for bringing housing back into occupation. I got that wrong.
That's so right.
Yeah, maybe that's something I could note for our update, for a specific part of that update to touch on speed of progress and give us information about turnaround times.
You know, there really should have been more information on best practice in the council, because Councillor Evans did send us an email, which obviously was acknowledged and forwarded to the Director of Housing.
I think mentioned we discussed best practice with the examples.
Oh, I might have missed adding it to my recommendation sections. We can request some more information about what good practice they've actually done with, because they did say they were networking and looking at good practice, but do you want me to put a request in for?
No, but he acknowledged that request and he said he'd come back to us, but it's no harm to reinforce it.
Yeah.
Because Councillor Linton was talking about some ideas from Bristol that,
yeah,
you know, Bristol's only a neighbouring city, you know, there should be some awareness of what's happening there.
I'd like to our information update. Also noticed speed of progress, like you said, Chair, but I've also added best practice examples if applicable, if they've gone away, had a look, and they've seen whatever scheme they like and bring it in. They should maybe give us an update on that in the next year, because that would be helpful.
UK wide.
Yes, I put nationally, yeah. Anything else to add?
I don't know, I didn't raise it, it's not very appropriate, the Councillor Linton might, we used to have a scheme where housing developers, rather than put affordable housing on a particular site, could then decide to renovate empty properties. I don't know if that still exists, or there's something to look into. It'd be a win-win from the developer's point of view. Sometimes developers would like to have a, you know, a sort of posh development, and then rather than having the affordable element within the housing thing, that money goes into an empty strategy thing to spend more money on renovating properties across the city which are empty.
Yeah, good idea.
You know, I'm afraid we can't really raise that one now.
No, I didn't want to raise it there, but perhaps, you know, you could look at it into it maybe in a win-win situation.
And it's something we can bear in mind for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Would it be appropriate, Chair, to raise with Cabinet the difficulty of the lack of accountability to this council of registered social landlords?
Well, that's primary, well, it's a primary legislation, but it's a legislation from the Welsh Assembly that's
but it's, yeah, I see that.
It's the Welsh Assembly, it's a Welsh government, you need to express those concerns.
Yeah, well, that's what Cabinet can do.
Yeah, Cabinet.
I suppose so, willing.
I mean, yeah, if they wouldn't, but I mean, I think that yeah, it's really pleasing that Parliament and we hear this morning. There are other social landlords as well, small social landlords, but they're not really accountable to us. And I think that's a failure in the system.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, maybe not in the issue that we're talking about this morning, but we've seen that in the number of houses, social housing being built in Newport in the past.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because there's different legislation governing us versus social landlords. They are monitored, just not by us. But I would say that the assurances that we've had this morning are that the partnership working is really strong, and that we do get, you know, annual reports from them about their progress. It's entirely up to you. I can include a recommendation about Cabinet writing to Welsh Government, but it's entirely up to committee.
Well, outside the context of this scrutiny, we can certainly write to the Cabinet and ask them to investigate the accountability of the money that's spent within Newport by ourselves. So that makes sense.
I think so, Chair.
I think that's reported to Welsh Government though, isn't it, Chair?
Oh, we're only asking for the report back. You know, if it exists, there's no reason why we can't have it, is there?
I couldn't tell you if there was or wasn't, not to play with that legislation specifically. So what is the recommendation the committee wants to make?
More information on how there's the account. Yeah, it's a request. More information on how the accountability of money spent with within Newport. So,
The grant money.
Yeah.
So more information on how the accountability of how grant monies are spent by ourselves. No problem.
No, I don't feel it's exactly the right question, and you know, if we don't actually ask the right question, we certainly won't get the right answer. Because you know, there's a number of pots of money that's been explained this morning, and we've got some homelessness money. As it's specifically spent on homelessness, or is it spent on bricks and mortar?
The other thing I would say, obviously we're asking for this request by ourselves. They're in no obligation to give it up to us. We
No.
can ask.
It's not.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that's clear.
I don't think you should be asking ourselves, you should be asking the Welsh Government.
Yeah.
Not the ourselves.
So we can only ask the Welsh Government.
Yeah, through the yes.
Councillor Davis, are you?
Yeah, personally myself, I felt that especially the representative from Heading was a bit blasé about the amount of properties that they had empty. I mean, to me, 700 plus seems an awful lot of properties.
Properties, councillor. I think that was the numbers of properties owned.
It was the number of properties that become vacant every year for rebuilding.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
The number of properties was 2.06%, I think.
Yes.
That are actually empty. That doesn't represent 700.
Yeah. Okay.
269 and 169 long terms, long with problems with future development.
Yes, and you know they're talking about £1,000 to refurbish.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, depending obviously on how the property is being left, it depends on exactly how much work that needs to be done. But I find myself, especially the ward I'm in, the properties are empty, and we're talking of, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 years that they're empty, and I feel as if that maybe there's not enough impetus to get those properties back up and running. It just seems an awful long time that they take to turn around those properties, when he was saying that they like to turn them around within 28 days and says he doesn't feel that's ambitious. I think it is. I think it's.
I think, councillor, that was for standard sort of easy turnarounds.
Yeah.
Days. The properties that might be empty longer, I think they said, you know, they do what they can, but they're working within a set amount of grant monies. So they, yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think he was sort of trying to push off that they don't acknowledge that problem.
But when we're going towards £100,000, we must question the viability of the property, whether it would be more economic to pull it down and start again.
Chair, I don't know whether the 100,000 was per property. I think that was all for the budgeted for, I would imagine. I don't think it's for 100,000. I don't think it come out per property, is it?
That's what I thought they were suggesting.
Well, it wouldn't be that much, otherwise, as you say, you'd knock it down and start again. But there's no way I could see that budget 100 grand. I wouldn't allow that. Well, may be wrong, but that's a hell of a lot of work being done to that property. That means the previous customer then has wrecked it totally. That's why I brought in, why aren't there the housing officers chasing up the customers for the state of the property and make sure they keep it at a good, suitable standard, because that's in their tenancy agreements.
Okay. I think these must remain unanswered questions for the moment, but as I say, I've requested that we have another look at this next year, and maybe we'll put a bit more detail. Okay, so we can move now to the scrutiny officer's report, please.
Yeah, of course. So I'll start with our forward work programme. There's no change there. Our next meeting.
Sorry, Chair, I gotta go.
Okay, thanks for your attendance.
Okay, bye.
Yes, as I was saying, sorry, Chair. No change in our forward work programme. Our next meeting will be the 9th of January. That'll be our budget meeting. We still have an empty slot in March. And our April meeting will be the update to our anti-poverty strategic plan, which is the last year.
Yeah.
Well, this year, but last couple of years. Quite a different report on the end for our outcomes. It's the 6-monthly summary report, if you will, of the outcomes and actions we've put forward since June. It gives a bit of detail about what response was there, how far the report's gone in the cycle, the governance cycle, links to cabinet reports where you can see reference to Scrutiny's recommendations and how they've been taken forward, responding to. As you can see, we're in a pretty good position. Most of our recommendations have been accepted, and our actions are mostly complete. There are a few that are ongoing, but these tend to be the longer term ones. For example, the information report about the consultation on the redesign of children's services, still ongoing, so I'm sure that report is complete. We do have one outstanding action, and that is the benchmarking data for the council tax levy. I will chase again after this meeting, but that is the only one outstanding, I believe.
Absolutely.
I haven't had a response for that recommendation yet, Chair, so I haven't put one in. It has been sent to officers again. I'll chase that after the meeting. But yeah, haven't to take any questions or any comments that you might have on the forward work programme or anything like that.
Sorry, for the committee, what I was referring to was the annual digital strategy report, 24th of 7th, and we asked for response times, and that's we haven't replied to that. And then unusually in the parenting strategy, got an accepted and noted against the same item.
Oh, what is that? Yes, I would just say that was accepted. That's just a misclick, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So
The clarification, Chair, for the Strategic Director.
Yeah, I've made a note of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
So on the whole, things we recommended seem to have been accepted, which obviously speaks well of this committee.
Yes.
Are you happy with sort of the format of how, obviously this is the first time you've seen this report, are you happy with how it's laid out? It's easy to sort of get grasps with what we've been doing. Yeah? No problem. That's all from me, Chair. I'm happy to.
Well, thank you all very much. And can we go offline, please?